Knitting is something that many people do not know about but find fascinating. That is because it is known as a lost art. However, to some people, it is not lost. I have been knitting for the past 9 years. According to the Craft Yarn Council, 93% of people who knit or crochet experience a feeling of accomplishment, and 85% experience reduced stress. Personally, I have experienced both a feeling of accomplishment and reduced stress. I want to pass this on to others, and today I will show you the basics of knitting. The first step to knitting a great project is choosing the proper materials. Most supplies can be found at a craft store, and most of the supplies that you need are just yarn and scissors and knitting needles. So my personal favorite craft store is Michael's, and that's because they have a little bit of everything and they sell it at a great price. According to Ivy Decker from Knitting and Crochet Today, 77% of knitters find their materials at a physical craft store. The type of yarn and needles is vital to the project. Yarn weight is important to how long the project will take and how heavy it will be. I got my cards out of order. Okay. The weight of the yarn, it does not equal heaviness, even though it sounds like it should. It equals thickness. So Alexandria Churchill on marthastewart.com compares the difference in weights of yarn, and it goes from 0 to 6 usually. 0 is something that you would knit lace with, or something really, really thin, and 6 is what is called super bulky, and it is something that you would knit like chunky knits with, like hats or pillows or something like that. There are yarns that exist that are thick enough that you could even knit with your arms. The weight of the yarn determines the size of the needles that you use. Today in the demonstration I'm about to do, I will be using a size 10. So I know you probably can't see that, but it says 10. Okay. Not all yarn is suitable for every project, and that is because there's some projects you just don't want thick. Like a sweater, you don't want a really thick, heavy wool sweater because that will be very, very hot and not comfortable. And you don't want a really, really thin hat because that's not going to keep you warm. After you found the perfect yarn that you can use for your project, it's time to begin knitting. So right now I'm going to show y'all all how to cast on. So the easiest way to cast on is to tie a simple slip knot, which you can do by making a loop, twisting, and pulling it through, just like that. And then you slip it on your needle. This will be your left needle. There are many different ways to cast on. There's a single cast on, a long tail cast on, a frilled cast on. I will be showing you a single cast on because that is what I'm most comfortable with. And the demonstration that I will be using I found on Instructables.com. So it is backed. So you wrap the working yarn, which is just the yarn that's connected to your ball or your skein, whatever you're using, around your finger, and you slide it onto the needle. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I will be casting on 15 for my coaster that I will be needing today. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Then you will slide the loop onto the needle. You will pull the loops tight, but not too tight. If they're squeaking, that means it's too tight. It has to slide off so it can transition onto the other knitting needle easily. Then you will continue until you have enough stitches. Like I said, I need 15 for my coaster that I'm going to demonstrate. After you cast on your project, you must work on the project. There are many types of stitches that you can use to do this. The most common type of stitch that I use is called knit through the back loop, and that is abbreviated as KTBL whenever you're looking at knitting projects. So I use the acronym BOUT for that, and so you go back, over, under, through. Again, that's back, over, under, through. I'm sorry, that might be kind of hard to see. The other stitch that I use most frequently is purl stitch, and that is nearly the exact same except you go through the front. So it's front, over, under, through, front, over, under, through. So purling is actually the opposite of knitting, and it's necessary for a lot of projects. But there are some stitches that aren't necessary for most projects, but they are necessary for once you start doing things like lace or if you start doing like really fancy patterns. Those are knit two together, so I would you just do regular knit stitch, so back, over, under, through, but with 2 stitches instead of 1. There is also a slip knit, which is very similar. So you slip one onto your right needle, slip one onto your left needle, and then knit those 2 together. And there's also yarn over, which is just adding a stitch. Okay, after knitting your project, it is time to cast off. So clearly I don't have a project here. So I've got this one I've already made up. This is my little coaster, and I knitted it specifically for this, and it took me about 45 minutes probably. So there are many types of casting off, and I will be showing you the instructions based upon simpleknitting.com. First, I will knit 2 stitches, 1, 2. I will pull the second stitch, the right stitch, over the left stitch. Again, over the left stitch. Okay. And then you will just keep doing that until you reach the end of your work. And then after that, you can finish it. So it is very important that you don't pull too tight here, otherwise your work is going to pucker, and that is not good. And then it won't be the same shape all around. So that's not very good. You want to keep your work from puckering. And as you can see, I've learned to knit without looking, so that's fun for TV with family time and that sort of stuff. So before I show you casting off, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Elizabeth Zimmerman, who was a former knitter. On the subject of knitting, she said, "Properly practiced, knitting soothes the troubled spirits, and it doesn't harm the untroubled spirits either." Knitting has served as a major stress reliever in my life and a way to be productive. Many people are intimidated by the idea of knitting, but once you have the basics down, the options are truly endless. And so, as I finish my presentation, I'm going to finish this coaster. So what you do, I've got this little loop. It's the last one on my needle. I just slipped it off. Don't drop it. I'm going to cut this a couple of inches away from my project. Okay, I'm just going to stick it and pull it through and just pull it tight. And there you have it. That is a finished coaster.